It was very much my mission and belief that really we should use this birthday to look to the future. Good Housekeeping has survived as a brand 100 years and is in robust health because it's always delivered what readers and the audience need at any given moment.
Welcome to Media Voices, everybody. We take a look at all the news and the views from the media world over the past week. I'm Chris Sutcliffe.
I'm Esther Thorpe.
And I'm Peter Houston.
And that clip you just heard is from my conversation with Gaby Huddart, who is Group Editorial Director at Hearst UK and Editor-in-Chief of Good Housekeeping. So we talked about celebrating the brand's centenary last year with their first multi-day live event, what a good housekeeping reader looks like today, and why it's so important for the title to be future-facing.
But our main story this week is that Meta is going to pay BuzzFeed something in the region of $10 million to generate creator content for Facebook and Instagram. Now, a partnership of this nature seemed to me to have been resigned to the past, considering everything that's happened, A, between publisher and platform, and B, with BuzzFeed's status and financial
I had to check the date. I had to check it wasn't like 2017.
It is very strange, isn't it? But Esther, why don't you take us
creator
through...
would
True.
no one would say creator in 2017.
Well, that's true. But Esther, why don't you take us through exactly what's happening with this, the nitty-gritty of it all?
Okay, well, I'll say details are fairly scant because the Wall Street Journal broke this and it was just very much like they'd just got the overview of what was going on. But the top level thing seems to be that BuzzFeed is going to help generate content for Meta's platforms and, quote, train creators to grow their presence online. BuzzFeed and Facebook have sort of got a partnership going back almost a decade. They were quite a close partner of the infamous pivot to video in 2016-17. BuzzFeed very much built their a lot of their content business around going viral on Facebook. But I thought, like, sort of in the absence of any other details, I just thought this was a really bizarre partnership because I don't know about you guys, but like I feel like BuzzFeed isn't cool anymore. Like maybe that's a bit unfair, but
well, that's why they're on Facebook.
Okay, now it's Facebook.
Yeah.
Like certainly their presence and influence on social has declined sort of with Meta's influence over the last 5 years. And they're not, I also wouldn't say that they're particularly known for pioneering creators. So I think it's a very curious choice of partner here. It's
a very strange one, isn't it? Because A, I'm confused by what creator means in this sense.
Bullshit.
For me, creator has always meant kind of an individual or a group of creators who are actually doing something.
BuzzFeed is going to help sort of find and nurture these individuals with large social followings that primarily monetize through sponsorship. I was a bit like... So,
these are people that have been making quizzes on BuzzFeed.
No, that's been done by robots now, and that's the second part of this story.
This presumably is the people who do have a slight or like scant, but still sizable social following who want to supercharge their activities across Facebook and Instagram. Also,
I feel a bit behind now. Like, what's the difference between a creator and an influencer?
I'll tell you exactly what happened here. It's that influencer marketing began to take a hit because people didn't want to be associated with influencers because of a string of scandals and also the fact that the sheen had come off it. So instead they went, actually, no, we're going to go broader. We're going to be creators now. And if that sounded cynical, I honestly didn't mean it to.
Creator has the idea of they actually do create something, where influencer has that kind of image of just swanning around and taking selfies.
But I've seen them say that when they're taking selfies and creating videos themselves swimming in the Bahamas, that is creating content.
It is.
Which it is.
Yeah, of course.
It speaks to our complete antipathy in this industry with the word content, because that literally just means anything.
Absolutely.
Also, I think the idea is, and having spoken to quite a few people about this recently, it's this idea that the act of creation makes something premium.
Well, creators has got that kind of artisan feel, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Like someone that made a stool out of a fallen oak tree kind of thing. Whereas influencer doesn't. It's like, it actually sounds quite sinister in a weird sort of way.
Well, that is a fantastic contrast, that artisanal side, to what's actually happening on the other side of BuzzFeed this week. So, Peter, what is happening with AI at BuzzFeed?
The robots are coming. BuzzFeed said they are going to start using AI to write quizzes, which, to be honest, if they had all started like 6, 9, 10 months ago, you probably wouldn't have noticed, would you? The interesting part of this, though, is just the fact that their stock just went straight up 120%.
Well, you know why?
The cynicism behind that is just unbelievable. We've had this. So last week we had the the AI conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we got to was, well, we see AI as a great thing as long as it's a tool that is used to enhance content. There's that word again. Rather than just churn out content. And this story is basically underlining the second part of that little paradigm.
I think, though, because, and this particularly applies to BuzzFeed, because of the way BuzzFeed works and the fact that its cost base has been very, very difficult for it to control. It relies on scale. It relies on churning out all that content. And actually, that's where AI does fit neatly into it. You know, you're not looking at, obviously not to disparage any of the work that BuzzFeed do, but you're not looking at people spending. For the third time
this episode.
I know, I'm so sorry, BuzzFeed guys. But, you're not looking at people spending days carefully crafting in-depth features since they've fired most of their news team. It is very much like you're looking at that sort of high volume, very much high production that people will churn out however many quizzes during the day. And that actually is where I can see AI... Gosh, adding value is possibly not the right term, but I can see why the stock market has responded well to this. And the stock has also risen on the news of them partnering with Meta, because I think people are suddenly like, wait, Meta has money for publishers now?
No,
it has money for creators.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we were talking last week about it being, useful in the right context. Generating quizzes and listicles is probably something that AI can do fairly well. It doesn't even need to be particularly sophisticated.
I think my soul just left my body listening to that.
But then it's quite interesting because I swear like most of their quizzes were being done by their volunteers anyway, because there was that girl who ended up generating like tens of millions of page views to them that ended up not being paid in because she was just a college grad or something.
Yeah.
So I didn't think the quizzes were a huge cost base for them anyway, but
it's not. But what they want is more pages. They want more ad spaces. They want more ad spots to be able to sell against. And so
this is what advertising does to you people.
Also, this is all about perception again. The stock market, they've got to be the stupidest bastards on the planet. The people that run the stock market. Because they're just looking, someone at BuzzFeed goes, yeah, we're going to use AI. Oh, I'll buy BuzzFeed stock, and it goes up 120%. No one has a clue what that means. No one has a clue what the result is going to be. These greedy bastards just see an opportunity to make some money.
Do you remember, it was a couple of years ago now, there was an experiment where they got an analyst from Wall Street and a child and somebody just throwing pieces of paper with the names of companies into the air. And they tested the performance of stock picked by the analyst, the child, and completely random. And the analyst consistently performed worse.
I think all of this, for me, sits against the background of a piece of essay ran in the newsletter. It's this thing, Layoff Brain, from Anne Helen Peterson, who used to be at BuzzFeed and now does a successful Substack. It's just awful reading through that. The idea of this constant feeling of who's next, even if you don't get laid off. But at BuzzFeed or any other company, you're constantly worried about who's next. There's a quote in there: "My relationship with work is one of mistrust." Well, that's living like that. We all know that feeling. It's awful. It's interesting how every company that's cut people recently has cut about 5 to 7%. Why is that? Well, it's because they're using this so-called recession as cover to get rid of the people that they hired through the pandemic when they were all doing great. And now it's like, so again, Peterson's in this piece says, CEOs are willing this recession into existence to create a justifying narrative for layoffs, not because they need to save money, but to press reset on what they view as out of control compensation package and worker demand. So basically they're just screwing people over because they've got the cover of this recession. So that actual piece is one of the most depressing things I've read in a very long time.
It's very, very good though.
Yeah, it's great. It's so well done. It's very honest as well.
I've seen a number of things about it, with people comparing and contrasting the number of layoffs versus the hiring that went on during the pandemic. We've barely scratched the surface of and I know Amazon's a slightly different case because their business went bananas during the pandemic, but the number of people they hired, like their business just, and yes, they've now fired sort of, I think about 8,000, but they'd hired sort of 40 times that. So I think the context there is quite important. And I think people were expecting a lot of the behaviours to carry, like things like the e-commerce boom, they're expecting that to carry on, just accelerating. It's like, well, no, because we were going to go back. I don't want to say back to normal, but we were going to go back to that point eventually. Yeah, or at least back to some sense of normalcy. And those behaviours were not going to carry on. No, so people were hiring off the back of that.
It's definitely changed buying behavior, but it hasn't changed buying quantity across that way. So people are more likely to buy online, but that doesn't mean they're going to be buying in the same quantity. It always seemed to me to be a bit of a hide into nothing. We've moved on quite a bit from this BuzzFeed story there. So to kind of, I suppose, to wrap this up, so I want to put a question to the two of you here and to any publishers who are listening. If you are using AI to generate your content, as BuzzFeed is going to be doing now for a subsection of its quizzes, they talk about personalizing content using it. What then is your point of differentiation from every other publisher who's going to start doing exactly the same? And what is it going to do to your perception as a premium publisher? Oh, I wish that the audience could see this because you both just started nodding in perfect unison.
It's just the same old story, right? It's like all these people dive into the cheapest way of doing something, realize that everyone is doing exactly the same thing, and then scramble to try and find a way to make themselves different. That's the big story with the AI and SEO. People are worried that Google is going to just slam them above them, and else Google's going to have its own AI that it's going to be punting. So
robot versus robot.
I think Brian Morrissey nailed this when we talked about this last week. It's that idea of differentiation comes from the humanity that you bring to these things, whether that's reporting or whether that's emotion or whatever. I think that's the point.
I also think it's going to be a bit of an antithesis to, if I tell you, the sort of people on LinkedIn who post like they were written by an AI, it's going to force a little bit of differentiation. They're the people that were just writing absolute nonsense.
Is there LinkedIn Bollocks Awards?
Yes, there's a whole Twitter account dedicated to LinkedIn Bollocks.
That's such a great idea.
It does remind me of it though. Do you remember a lot of the problems that there were with viewing stats and basically bots coming and skewing website stats back 5 years ago?
Do we remember? Well,
yeah.
Specifically 5 years ago, I'm not sure, but over the last 5 years, yes.
Well, yeah, generally over the past decade, there's been a huge problem with bots just coming and pretending to view stuff. Are we just going to end up in this internet where robots are just generating stuff that is just viewed by robots?
Oh, it's already happening.
And we monetize that.
Yeah, I think we're probably there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's fine anyway, because the spend isn't all going on that. It's also going to other robots because of the opacity of the advertising system. So we've got robots stealing money from the robots who are creating content for other robots. So
and who's spending the money? The robots? Perfect little circle, wouldn't it?
But this is just going to come back to why it's so important to have registration walls, to know who your audience is, to write for a clearly defined audience, and the people that are in the niches will win.
And so there's a piece on Digi there, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, talking about the return to print advertising because you can get away from all this digital bollocks. I just thought that was great.
Moving on to news in briefs, and this one isn't.
We need a jingle for that.
We do, yeah. Don't worry, I'll write one. I'll put it in post.
Yeah, we need that.
This isn't an especially useful story, but it's one that really caught my imagination this week. In fact, it's actually mostly anecdotal, which might be why it took my imagination, because it is written on such a human and despairing level. So I really enjoyed the FT's admission that its foray into running a Mastodon server was a total nightmare for them. They flag up the fact that the legal side of it was really the biggie, the one that caused them to shut it down entirely. Responsibility for what sells on social media probably lies with the platform, or in this case, the people who run the individual server. And while there is the potential that they would win that argument in court, the FT decided that the costs of potentially having to do that outweighed the benefits. But my favorite takeaway was that running a Mastodon server professionally, the costs just grow so exponentially as you have to add server sizes, you have to add resources to take care of it and to moderate it all, that they basically decided, no, that the only thing we can do here is to completely nuke it from orbit because it's the only way to be sure.
Does that make you feel a little bit more empathetic to the likes of Twitter and Meta and the people that are dealing with this day in, day out?
No.
Yeah, it makes me think. It makes me think you shouldn't fire them.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, you shouldn't decide to run Twitter on a skeleton, but on a skeleton staff, for instance. But I don't feel sorry for them because, you know, if I'd taken a job where my role was to hold jellyfish, and I then went online and complained about how all the jellyfish kept stinging me, and I was getting dragged out to sea by the jellyfish, I took that job. I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah, fair enough. Ben Smith in Semaphore has written a piece about the apparent dwindling enthusiasm amongst the super rich for funding newspapers and magazines. Who knew?
I'm looking at you, Chance the Rapper.
I'm conflicted with this. My political instinct is to go, yes, fuck the billionaires. But my business brain is a little bit worried for the future of these newsrooms because they needed, these guys saved these publications. And there's a list going back to Bezos in 2013. So billionaires owning media companies is a bad idea in general, but the thing with this list, the new money that's on the list, way more benign than certain other octogenarian or even nonagenarian media moguls that we could talk about.
He's got a new missus.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. What first attracted you to the billionaire Rupert Murdoch?
Anyway, the point with this story that Ben Smith has done is that while these rich dudes keep these publications afloat, none of them has actually managed to reinvent the news business model. And that's really the point of all this, is that the only thing that's really going to save independent news provision is figuring out a new business model.
The thing I read, there was a line in this. Ben Smith definitely had some spicy lines in this. He said that these billionaires would have probably looked at the news business, gone, "Hey, you know, I'm a really successful entrepreneur. I can go in and fix that." Bought the business, and then suddenly realized, like, actually, media is a really difficult business to be in.
Yeah.
And once they've realized how difficult it is, they've kind of gone like, "Okay, I'm just going to back off a little bit."
Yeah.
With the one exception, he does cite Lauren Powell Jobs, who bought the Atlantic, as being one of the ones that has actually rolled up her sleeves, got quite involved, and they are doing very, very well. It's just some of the lines in it were just really quite funny.
It's an interesting counterpart to something we shared in the newsletter this week about a sort of conglomerate of US local newspapers who basically said, well, look, absolutely, we want entrepreneurs, we want billionaires to get involved in funding, we want the government to get involved in funding, we want advertising funding. They were basically saying we can't rely solely on any one of those. So we can't rely on billionaires just coming in and buying it up and providing an endless well of money. That's great if they do, but we actually want to stand on our own 2 feet with a mix of 6.
Oh, even if they are benign, they could change their mind. They could think of something, they want to go to space or something, so they want to spend their money somewhere else. And
Bezos had to reassure the Wall Street Journal newsroom that he's not looking to sell at the moment.
Still say we should eat the rich.
That's two cheerful stories. I'm not going to make this any more cheerful. My pick of news and briefs this week is that the US government this week has filed what Casey Newton describes as potentially its most significant case yet against Google. So the US Justice Department and 8 states are suing Alphabet Inc.'s Google, calling for the breakup of the search giant ad tech business because of alleged illegal monopolization of the digital advertising market. Well, I actually managed to say that. I managed to get all those words out.
That is quite a sentence.
The lawsuit, I'll link to the Casey Newton piece because he's got all the details in it. It says that they want Google to divest the Google Ad Manager suite, which includes all their publisher ad server and Google's ad exchange. I thought this one was quite interesting because, this isn't the first bit of regulation Google have been up against. They've managed to brush most of the tech giants have managed to brush most of it off. I think GDPR and the California Act being the exceptions, but, they still haven't seen any real consequences from that. Casey Newton reckons that this is probably the one that they're not going to be able to just brush off because this is actually quite serious.
I remember a couple of months ago, Alphabet's solution to this was, okay, don't worry about it. We'll just split up the buy side and the sell side, and the buy side will stay with us in Alphabet and the sell side will go to Google. And people were just like, what? No, you're the same company. Like, that doesn't, just because you've like...
But you're right, though. One of these eventually is going to stick and it'll change things.
So it's just, will we sort of still be here in another 10 years with exactly the same situation? Or actually, could the next few years really define, I suppose, some of the regulation actually having teeth around this?
If it's not Google and Meta, it'll be another two tech giants. It'll be Amazon and Apple. It'll be, in the same way that it used to be like Yahoo and somebody else.
Well, it kind of goes in waves, doesn't it?
Yeah. UKIP from orbit is the only way to be sure.
Turn it all off. All right, but let's not turn it off before you've listened to this week's interview with Good Housekeeping Editor Gaby Huddart. So we covered quite a lot, from how readers' attitudes to their homes have changed over the pandemic to the role Good Housekeeping Institute plays in building trust. But I started by asking her how Good Housekeeping Live came about late last year and how the event went.
So, it's not the first ever live event for the brand. We've done live events, but they've been sort of, I suppose, what you call pop-up live events. So kind of, we've done an event with readers when the author Karen Slaughter was over at the Good Housekeeping Institute with maybe 60 guests coming to a Q&A with her. Did a lovely event with Ottolenghi for a book launch a couple of years ago. But I suppose this event was more of a festival. So it was 2 days. We took over an amazing venue, Carlton House Terrace in London, St James's. And it's a beautiful venue, huge house. And really, it was a 2-day, wall-to-wall festival of everything Good Housekeeping. And, we were lucky, we worked with some amazing sponsors at the event. So Dyson, which is have a lot of their products that go through our Good Housekeeping Institute, and obviously a very future-facing brand, which, a lot of what we did at Good Housekeeping Live and really over the course of the year, we were celebrating 100 years of heritage, but we really used that special anniversary to sort of be future-facing and look at what's coming down the line for our audiences. And so the festival, the Good Housekeeping Live was really part of that. And there was, fabulous talks with lots of our favourite celebrities. So, Davina McCall, who they love, Lucy Worsley, some of the Strictly stars, Anton Dubek and Shirley Ballas. Who else do we have? We had finance experts, Dame Helena Morrissey was there giving advice, Nadia Hussein, Monica Galetti, some of the favourite households, known chefs, Ruth Jones, amazing authors like Ruth Jones and Fern Britton, Jojo Moyes. So, as a brand, we're known and loved by a lot of celebrities who work with us and people who are experts in their field as well. So all of them were there to meet and talk with readers. Plus, we had demonstrations of various things as well. Fashion talks from our experts. We are lucky as a brand in that we've got a team of, I'm very proud to say I've got the best journalists in the business on my team. And so, Brennan, our group fashion director, was there giving advice on fashion to our audience. Our beauty director, Eve Cameron, was there talking about, how to age well and giving readers lots of advice. So it really championed the brand and all our experts, and then brought in friends of the brand as well and put them in front of readers. And then we, were fortunate to work with some great sponsors and doing activations with them so that readers could see their products and services as well. So it was an amazing 2 days. I absolutely loved it, and the team loved it. And it's important. It allowed us to meet well over 2,000 readers over the course of that 2 days, who travelled into London to spend time with us, and it really sort of, I suppose, illustrated their passion for this brand, which is quite humbling, really.
Yeah. I did know, because, Hearst has been quite well known for doing its live experiences for other brands for quite some time. And I know there's been a pandemic and all that, but 2022 does seem quite late for an inaugural event for Good Housekeeping in terms of sort of the size and scale. I suppose, were you waiting for the centenary, or was it just a case of focus and resource?
I mean, there's just always a lot going on with Good Housekeeping. I mean, as I said, we have done lots of individual events before, and we'll do kind of things where we get readers into the Good Housekeeping Institute, and they'll come and do a tasting, or they'll come and meet an author, or we'll do those kind of individual events showcasing different elements of the brand. But putting on a large scale event like this is a lot of resource, and the hook of the 100th birthday just seemed like a very good time to do it. I mean, that said, it was such a success, and our readers loved it so much, as did we as a team, because it's allowing us really to showcase what we do in a kind of different format. So we are looking at hopefully doing something later on this year.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is that the last one?
No, it won't be the last one. No, I think it's sort of re-energized us all. We'd love to do it, but you've got to keep these things fresh. You can't just it was a great event, but we'd need to change it some way. So how do we keep it fresh? How do we keep it as something that, the people who came last year, it would still surprise and delight them, really. So that's the work we're starting on doing now. But fingers crossed, we'll be back with another event this autumn.
Brilliant. What else did you do last year to mark the centenary?
So lots of different things. So editorially, we did some retrospective articles across platforms celebrating our heritage. But, it was very much my mission and belief that really we should use this birthday to look to the future. Good Housekeeping has survived as a brand 100 years and is in robust health because it's always delivered what readers and the audience need at any given moment. So we're relevant now, but also looking to the future. So we did some things where we showcased our experts' knowledge in a series of best 100 articles. So that was everything from, best 100 beauty tips, cookery tips, home tips, and that sat in a specific channel on our website. We also asked some leading experts in their fields to write us a series of future-gazing articles. So we had everybody from Sir James Dyson talking about the future of invention, Dame Sarah Gilbert talking about looking at future pandemics, and obviously having developed the vaccine for COVID, how that might go in the future. Liz Bonin talking about sustainability looking forward, obviously the issue with climate change. And so real leading it, Deborah Meader, not on entrepreneurship going forward. So we ran a series over the year, and that again ran across platforms. And then two other key initiatives that we were very passionate about last year. We partnered with Women Supporting Women, which is part of the Prince's Trust. And that really is about helping young women aged up to the age of 30 get a foothold in their careers, either as a business or get training to propel them forward. And very much conscious that this was important to help the next generation come through. And so we encouraged our audience, who in print would be a little bit older than that, to really become mentors for Women Supporting Women at the Prince's Trust. They're very keen to have energetic mentors. So we ran a series of articles with Women Supporting Women, and we also encouraged our readers to get involved with their event in October, which is the Brilliant Breakfast, and host a brilliant breakfast with friends. That I think was very successful. And, we're hoping to continue working with the Prince's Trust on the Women Supporting Women initiative, because it is very important to put the ladder down for the women coming through. And then the other thing we did as an initiative, we partnered with the Women's Prize for Fiction, which you probably know, which shines a spotlight on women authors in particular. And we created with them the Futures Prize, which involves a panel of judges from the Women's Prize and from Good Housekeeping. And we shortlisted 10 authors who we feel will be the great authors of the future for this country. And we then, over the series of the year, across platform, introduced those authors and their books to our readers and got them to vote on their favourite. And at Good Housekeeping Live, we announced who the readers had voted as their favourite future author. And that was Stacey Halls, who's written, among other things, Mrs. England. And that really was, again, it was up to the age of 35. Now, the reason we did that was because lots of research, including from the Prince's Trust and a huge number of organisations, really showed that the pandemic had adversely affected young women more than other people in society. So we were very keen to basically help the next generation, and particularly with authors. We know books are a passion point for our audience to shine the spotlight on the next generation of women authors. And I think it was very successful in doing that. And I mean, interestingly, going into this year and continuing the theme with reading, I've chosen as our partner charity for this year the National Literacy Trust, because research by that charity has found that the pandemic and followed by the cost of living crisis is really badly impacting young children. And now 20%, I mean, I can't get over this, of young children have no books at home.
Yeah.
Moreover, school libraries are now disappearing. And as a publisher of magazines and of websites, we need the next generation reading and finding joy in reading. And, you know, for all sorts of reasons, to ensure fairness in society and diversity in society, people have to have equal access to reading and to books. So we're really just starting work on that campaign now. So, but yeah, so that's a little bit last year and then a bit of this year, but lots of things going on really to try and ensure that Good Housekeeping is future facing and is really assisting the next generation of women and young people coming through as well.
So I suppose, what does a Good Housekeeping reader look like now? Do you still find that you've got a sort of core audience of maybe women that are more sort of in the home, or is that changed since?
I mean, I think Good Housekeeping, I think that the name we were set up 100 years ago, so 1922, after the First World War. I mean, originally the brand came from the US, was set up in the US in 1885 for the pioneering women of the Midwest, to help them. And then our founder, William Randolph Hearst, launched it in the UK after the First World War, really to help initially middle-class women who were setting up their homes fit for heroes. After the First World War, people couldn't afford domestic help anymore. And so they were really setting up their homes. The mission of the magazine, always when it first launched, it was twofold. People who don't know Good Housekeeping is probably about housekeeping, but actually the mission of it when it was first set up, and I'll just read you the first editor's letter, it was that there should be no drudgery in the house. There must be time to think, to read, to enjoy life, to hold one's youth as long as possible, to have beauty around us, colour in dress, form, and colour in our surroundings, to have good food without monotony. So really, it was about, if you have a well-run home, if you organise your life effectively, it frees you up for the finer things of life, the good things. And so the brand was always about, here's advice to have a well-run home, but here's inspiration for fashion, for beauty, for reading, for travel, for all of those other things. And so it's far more than just about housework and you know, housewives. And then the other thing, the second prong was, as a brand, was that the burning questions of the day will be reflected in articles by women in the public eye, by women who are fearless and frank and outspoken. And that was the second prong. And again, that's very, very important. Both of those prongs are important to the DNA, and we've stayed true to that. I think that's why we're still successful with how we cover those things and on what formats and what platforms has changed. But actually, at our root, we still do those things. We give people good advice to have a well-run home and well-run life, and inspire them on all the other areas of life. And we also run some, you know, cracking editorial to inspire thinking and to challenge people's thinking. So the reader, I mean, I think we've got lots of different readers. In the print audience, I think is largely women, but we're very fortunate in really appealing to two generations of women. I mean, I think young women who are renting post-uni probably are too young for us. It's really when people get their first home that they come to us as an audience. But we've got 2 and 3 generations of women now that read us. So to do a sort of pen portrait of one typical reader is quite hard, because I'll have readers writing to me who are in their 30s. I'll have readers who are writing to me in their 80s. And we work very hard to appeal across that, not really thinking about the age of somebody, but really to appeal across audience. And then on our website, we will skew younger than that. So we've got a lot of readers who really across ages. So, if you're a teenager and you spill a bottle of red wine on your parents' carpet when you're having a party, I think there's something that people know Good Housekeeping well enough to think, how am I going to get that stain out? And, we're such a well-known brand in the UK that I think we appeal to all ages. And we know that over a quarter of our audience on the website are men who are coming to us for our recipes and our product reviews. So, so a lot of men are very familiar with the brand as well. So it's really a vast audience. Largely women in print, but men as well on the website and really right across a huge age range of people. So it's about the content that interests people. And that has changed from when we launched. It was squarely aimed at women, and 20% of women were working when we launched in 1922. It's now 80% of women who are working. Interestingly, the lifespan of a woman in 1922 was age 54, and it's now 81. So obviously our audience is, has grown and broadened over the century. But yeah, I'd like to think that, there's something in there pretty much for everyone now.
Yeah. Have you noticed there's been any kind of shift in either demand or behaviours from the pandemic? Because I suppose people spent a lot more time at home, both men and women. Have you found sort of any changes in the way people are approaching housekeeping and their home life generally now?
Well, I think definitely, during the pandemic itself, we could just see it happening every day on the traffic on the website, the interest in everything around the home, from, cooking as well, to home decor, to gardens. It just went absolutely off the scale. So that love of home and actually making your space somewhere that you wanted to be, I think was really key. I know because I did it myself, having, not spending much time at home pre-pandemic, and then suddenly you're there and you start noticing all the things that need doing in your house. So we know that we gave people a lot of advice there. I think now we're in a phase where the challenges are a bit different. I think we've, although it's very recent history, I think people have moved on in a way from it. And I think obviously now the key things that people are grappling with is the cost of living crisis. And that's where we find people are coming to us for advice on, how to use less energy at home, and how to cook more cheaply, and advice basically to trim the costs on living well, but doing it for less money. So we're providing a lot of advice in that regard. And the other thing that obviously is coming through as an increasing interest and concern for people is sustainability. So again, that's another area there where we're really ramping up our content and looking to give people good advice. And I think that going forward. So I think there's patterns that have changed. I think really we have moved on from what we were seeing in the pandemic now to different interests, really.
One of the other things that happened last year, apart from your centenary, was that the Queen passed away. And I can imagine, probably especially for your audience, she was quite an important figure. As an editor, how did you navigate that? I think you did a special issue, didn't you?
Yes. So, we know we did a great big survey last year of our readers, basically across all hundreds of different things about their attitudes to life. And one of the questions that we asked was about female role models and, who they most looked up to. And by an absolute mile, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was their number one, even ahead of their own mothers and grandmothers.
Wow.
She was so universally loved, I think, by people in the country. So we had worked on doing sort of a lot of special things around the Platinum Jubilee, which we did. But we had also, we pulled together for our November issue, we pulled together a special supplement, Memories of Queen Elizabeth II, that went out to newsstands and subscribers, basically with memories, beautiful photography, and sort of looking back at her reign. And I suppose, for the country, it was such a huge moment. And I think our audience was really sort of quite devastated by it. She was sort of the Queen seemed immortal somehow, although she was a an elderly lady. She'd been part of our lives for such a long time. So I think I hopefully we did her proud with our special supplement, and I had some very nice emails and letters and so on from readers about it, who I think were pleased to see Good Housekeeping marking such a historic event. To have something as a souvenir that you can keep, marking that was very important to us as a brand. Her Majesty the Queen came to the throne fairly soon after Good Housekeeping launched, and so there was some parallels there with, obviously it was our 100th birthday, but Her Majesty the Queen was 96, so I think I think it was very important to market really across all our platforms, and social and the e-newsletter and the website, but particularly in print, to give our audience a souvenir that they could keep. Felt like something that we should do, and I hopefully from the feedback I've had, we did it well.
Yeah. The Good Housekeeping Institute, I know you've mentioned it earlier on. I suppose, could you just give a little bit of background about what that is? And I suppose, to what extent does the magazine work alongside that, or is it very much separate?
No, I mean, it underpins absolutely everything we do. So the Good Housekeeping Institute launched in 1924, and it really became the engine room of testing products. And the reason it came about, it was really to help readers choose and buy the best based on testing by a team of researchers and scientists. And that from that grew the Good Housekeeping tried and tested stamp of approval. And that really remains a unique cornerstone of the brand today. It's so much so that an amazing 87% of consumers are more likely to buy a product which bears our GHI approved logo. And I think it's unique really in that the way that's always products have been tested there is to test products as a reader would test them at home. So not necessarily in a scientific, science lab. We do test them as they'd be tested at home. So for example, if we do a vacuum cleaning test, we'll use pet hair from Battersea. We collect pet hair from Battersea, and that will be stepped into all different kinds of carpets and hard flooring and so on. And then the vacuum cleaners will be tested against each other to basically see performance and suction power and everything, and the contents that will be weighed after they've done the test. But there is very much about using them as a reader would use them in their home. But I mean, we shine a light on those tests. I mean, it's really integral to what the brand does. The two work very closely together. We in print and on the website, we're showcasing the tests that are going on there all the time. So the two things work very closely. Obviously, there is a team of researchers and scientists working there all the time. But I mean, it gives us an amazing, unique power, really, as a brand, to actually not just write about things because we like the look of them. We're writing about products and services because they've been properly tested.
Yeah, I had a tour of it must be about 5 years ago. I remember just seeing there are all these washing machines going, and there was the vacuum cleaners in a sort of different section, and they were sort of applying, I think they were doing anti-aging cream and taking sort of photos under all the lights.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very, very high tech now. So obviously the equipment that the team use now, there's an enhanced hair machine now that, I mean, to the minute degree will measure frizz and moisture, and it will cover all hair types. And I mean, really state-of-the-art equipment. And then there's also a machine called a Visia that basically can look at your skin and your face and look at how things that you couldn't see with the naked eye, and it'll look at how much sun damage you've got and how you're aging and so on. It's kind of quite, I suppose, Willy Wonka kind of stuff. It's sort of really state of the art. But yeah, it's amazing. It really is. It's mind blowing, really, and to have that behind our brand is quite incredible, really.
So you've been at Hearst for almost a decade now, and I think a lot of people would argue that it's probably one of the most turbulent decades for media companies. I suppose, what are some of the biggest changes and opportunities you've seen for magazine media during that time?
I think it's how our audiences can consume our content obviously has just expanded exponentially across different platforms. So although, websites were going very well sort of 10 years ago, I think the expansion of digital content is just been absolutely incredible. And really now what we're all about is being wherever our audience is. So yes, there are audiences, the print brand is alive and kicking and very healthy. And some readers and consumers want to consume us in print and have one experience there. Equally, if you want to know what to cook tonight, you will go to our website and do a recipe search. Equally, we know social media is ever more important and reaching audience on there. So, our Instagram lives with cooking advice are very popular as well. And now we're increasingly putting content out on TikTok to appeal to the next generation of audience. My daughters keep seeing things on there. It's like, oh, this is from Good Housekeeping, Mum. And it's like, yeah, we're there too. And our cleaning videos are really popular on TikTok.
Of course.
So, yes, if for those teens and students who do actually want to clean something, there's some great advice on TikTok from Good Housekeeping. So I think that, when certainly during my career, when I first came into it, and I came from a print background, but now the opportunity to engage with an audience across platforms is amazing, and also being able to get that instant feedback from your audience. So pretty quickly now whether you're getting it right and what they want more of. And yes, we do surveys with our audience all the time, but we get a pretty good idea from the feedback we're getting on social. And my email inbox is testament to what people are enjoying and what they're not enjoying, or what they want more of and where they want advice. So we have a very sort of two-way dialogue with our audience, which I think is quite different as well. 10 years ago, it would be much more the mailbag coming in, and now it's pretty instant, which is fantastic as a journalist, that you can respond very, very quickly to what your audience wants.
Well, we talk a lot about media business models, and earlier we were talking about having a mix of 6. And if you do want to contribute to our broadening revenue mix, you can go to our Ko-Fi page and pay us either a one-off donation or support us on a recurring basis. You can find that by going to voices.media, where there is a link, and occasionally we tweet it out on our social channels. We're still on Twitter, we're not on Mastodon quite yet, and Media Voices Pod.
And you can sign up for our newsletter at voices.media. We do it every weekday, and you may notice that some of the stories that we talk about on the weekly podcast are mentioned first in the newsletter, so you can get a little jump on it all by signing up for our newsletter. Go to voices.media and sign up.
But until next week, when we'll be back with more optimistic chat about the role of AI in media. Thank you so much for listening. Do go to our website, and
how long is it going to be till they replace us with robots?
I think we'd struggle to program it to be as downbeat.
We couldn't program it to rant quite as much.
No, that's true.
When we go off.
Yet.
Bye.
Bye.